It's the Rio 2016 Olympics, and the men are about to line up for the 1500 meter final. In the USA, all eyes are on Matthew Centrowitz, who was America's only chance for a medal in the event. He had been a veteran competitor on the scene, netting himself a bronze medal in the 2011 World Athletics Championships and a silver in the 2013 World Championships. However, he had just missed out on a medal in his first Olympic Games in London, placing 4th, and had a disappointing World Championship race last year, placing 8th in Beijing. At age 27, Centrowitz was entering his prime in the event, but this also meant it was his last realistic chance at a medal in the Olympics. And facing him would be one of the most stacked lineups in recent history, with defending Olympic champion Taoufik Makhloufi being a key challenger. There was also Olympic and World Championship bronze medalist Abdelati Aguida and under-20 world record holder Ronald Quemoy. But despite how strong these athletes were, Centrowitz still had a small sense of hope that he could beat these runners. But there was one athlete in the field he knew he had zero chance against, and that was the 3-time world champion and Beijing Olympic gold medalist Asbel Kiprop of Kenya. Kiprop was seen as a heavy favourite for this race. He had run one of the fastest times in history at 3:26.69, quicker than the personal best of everyone else in the field by more than 2 seconds. He had also run the fastest time in the world that year at 3:29.33. So it was clear that Centrowitz had his work cut out for him. He felt going into this race that silver was his realistic best case scenario for him, and even that would be a huge challenge. But whilst it would be a tough break from the start, there was still a little bit of hope. 2015 had been Centrowitz's best year in terms of times, as he had lowered his 1500 meter personal record by a second, down to 3:30.4. He had also dipped under 1:45 for the first time in the 800 meters. Whilst Kiprop had been a dominant force, he was not invincible, as he had placed uncharacteristically low at 6th place in his last race before the Olympics. But since the Kenyan was otherwise undefeated in the 1500 meter that year, it seemed pretty clear that that was just a one-off bad day. Centrowitz had watched Kiprop glide past the field to win his semi-final, so it was clear that the Kenyan was turning up in prime form. The American got ready on the start line. Everything he had worked for in the last 10 years had come down to this. The race started with everyone pushing and shoving to establish their position. Centrowitz took the front early, but did not press the pace. The race favourite Kiprop slotted into his preferred position at the back of the field. He had lurked there for all 3 of his World Championship titles, then mounted a charge for the win in the last lap. Clearly, the Kenyan was hoping to do the same in Rio. Now you can probably see that it looked like these men were jogging, and that's because they were, as they went through the first 400 meters in 66.8 seconds, a pedestrian pace for these athletes. It's not uncommon for championship style races to play out like this, as taking the lead of the race has the drawback that you act as a pacemaker for everyone else. This allows them to tuck in behind you, conserve their energy, whilst you burn out trying to lead the pack. You only need to watch the 2024 Paris final to see this in practice. Drafting is a real thing in athletics, and it means that many races at the top level fall into a cagey cat and mouse game, where no one really wants to take the lead. As a result, the runners often keep a controlled pace for the first 3 laps, and then go all out on the final lap. But whilst this slow speed was common, a 400 meter split of 66.8 seconds was super slow. Unprecedentedly slow. It put the runners on track for a 4:10 finishing time. For reference, that might be the personal best of a mid-level high school runner. However, the crawling nature of this race suited Centrowitz nicely. Whilst he was not the fittest athlete of the field, he was among the best when it came to his final finishing speed, and with good positioning, he could snag himself a medal if this continued. Going into the second lap, Kiprop made his move early, easing past the field with his long stride, and whilst this happened, his compatriot Quemoy was tripped and came crashing to the ground. He was actually tripped out by Djiboutian athlete Ayanle Suleiman, who was trying to mark Kiprop's move and aggressively swung out to follow him. In doing so, he clipped the heels of the young prodigy. Despite a fall normally having race-ending consequences for most athletes, the pace was so slow that Quemoy was able to catch up to the pack within 100 meters, barely breaking a sweat. Whilst it seemed that Kiprop had made a decisive move and would theoretically start driving from the front, he soon fell back into the middle of the pack. Tactically, this seemed like an odd move. It's true that there are disadvantages to leading a fast race, but Kiprop was so much fitter than the rest of the field that he was one of the few people who could lead an all-out race from gun to tape. Why would he make a big move to the front just to settle into the middle of the pack again? Maybe it was a simple case of mind games from the Kenyan, letting everyone know he was full of energy. With only 2 laps left and the pace being as slow as ever, the race was opening up to be more and more volatile, especially given the finishing speed of some of these athletes. Makhloufi was another runner who would really benefit from this slow pace. He had won his gold medal in London in a similarly slow fashion that ended in a desperate final sprint. The Algerian was also an 800 meter runner and had claimed silver in the event during those very same games, so he clearly had the ability to run a fast last lap. As the race continued, it seemed more and more likely this would be the case, as they went through their second lap in 69.76 seconds. To put that into context, many top marathoners run faster than this pace in their own races, with the time converting to a 2 hours 2 minute 40 second marathon time. With 600 meters remaining, however, the pace finally began to quicken as everyone began jostling for a good position going into the final lap. In such a crowded field, ensuring you were not boxed in during what every athlete knew would be a 400 meter burn-up was crucial. Centrowitz was holding the inside line well, but he was beginning to be pressured by his competitors. He knew that he could not relinquish his lead at this stage in the race, as that would seriously compromise his ability to kick for home. In the last 500 meters, however, Suleiman took the lead, putting Centrowitz in a dangerous position. Kiprop was also beginning to push his way outwards for his signature 400 meter kick, with McLoughy and Aguida also looming. But just as things seemed doubtful, Centrowitz was able to slip past Suleiman on the inside and reclaim his pole position. But by this point, McLoughy was already making a break for the win. In doing so, he blocked a charging Kiprop on the outside, who was forced to run in lane 2. Centrowitz was still leading though, with Aguida sitting in striking rage on his shoulder. Down the back straight, Kiprop made his third big move, streaking past the field and challenging Centrowitz for the lead. It's 200 meters to go and the American is still fending off his opponents. They come into the last 100 meters of the race, and what would happen next would go down in running history.
Centrowitz holding on. Here comes McLoughy. Only meters to go. Centrowitz desperately trying to hold on. He got it.
Matthew Centrowitz would win his first ever gold medal, and it would be on the biggest stage of them all. He was the first American to win a gold medal in a distance event from the 800 to the marathon in over 40 years, and the first American to win the 1500 meter in 108 years. And this revelation was no more shocking to anyone than Centrowitz, who had said he'd never gone in expecting a gold medal. Kiprop had been such a strong threat and so unbelievably talented that beating him seemed like an insurmountable goal. In fact, before the race, Centrowitz's dad, also called Matt, had to give his son a pep talk and remind him that he had beaten Kiprop in races before, if sparingly. Centrowitz's father was also a former professional runner, and he had a much more expected reaction to seeing his son win gold.
He looks like a kid. Look at my sister. Good Lord. Oh man, just seeing him around the victory lap, all I said to him is, "Are you kidding me?"
As for Kiprop, he congratulated his rival on the win and overall seemed to handle the defeat gracefully. Looking back at how he ran, we can see he made several tactical errors that cost him the gold medal. He spent energy trying to go around the field 3 separate times, which resulted in him fading in the final 100 meters. Whilst his aerobic strength was second to none, there were people who could rival and beat him in a super slow race that came down to a final sprint. Letting the pace dawdle to such an extent and not making a convincing move to stretch out the field ultimately cost him the gold medal. Although the last lap was run in a blistering 50 seconds, the overall finishing time would be the slowest ever since the 1932 Olympics at 3:50 flat. Faith Kipyegon, the GOAT and world record holder in the women's 1500, recently ran 3:48.68 to break her own world record in a Prefontaine Classic. Whilst it did not affect him immediately, Centrowitz's win in Rio would become somewhat of a monkey's paw in his career. Most people agreed that it was certainly a strange race to watch, but also marvelled at Centrowitz's closing speed and his tactical brilliance at controlling the race from the front. Beating McLoughy and Kiprop was no small feat either. But many people question the legitimacy of this race due to the incredibly slow time, with some saying that Centrowitz simply got lucky and was not the best man on the day. This was worsened when the Paralympic Games T13 1500 meter men's final, a category for athletes with visual impairment, was won in a new world record of 3:48.29, with all 3 medalists dipping under 3:50. Of course, this was faster than Centrowitz's finishing time at the Olympics, leading to headlines that often appeared to question if his win was really something to be proud of. Centrowitz himself admitted that the criticism affected him mentally, and he hated having to justify what was supposed to be the crowning moment of his career. I, for one, never really understood the criticism. Very simply, he can only beat the people put in front of him, so blaming him for such a slow race just makes no sense. It was his choice to try and control from the front, sure, but it was the other athletes' choice to not push the pace themselves. Why didn't Kiprop, easily the fastest man of the field, drive the pace early? And this idea also assumes that a tactical race is not an impressive or legitimate way to win a world championship. Being able to position yourself correctly in such a volatile race environment is a skill in itself, and Centrowitz masterfully controlled the field from gun to tape. This is especially impressive when you consider that he was by no means the fittest and arguably not even the quickest athlete over the last 400 meter. Being able to win in spite of all this is something that is worthy of respect and definitely puts value on his gold medal. His bronze and silver in previous championships also show that this was no fluke. But what truly makes Centrowitz's win so interesting is that it gets us to question what it really means to be a world champion, be it in athletics or any other sport. Because I would argue that the winner of a world championship title is often not the best athlete in the world. This is too simplistic a worldview. Some athletes have good days when the time is right, others have bad days. Some athletes wake up with everything dialed in, with their training clicking to perfection, whilst others are ill, injured, or mentally distracted with other problems in their life. Centrowitz was tactically the sharper man during the final compared to Kiprop, who he beat decisively. But Kiprop was by far the most talented and fittest athlete in the field. Losing an Olympic final does not diminish or change his ability. This applies to every champion, because greatness in sport isn't about being the best in theory, it's about being the best when it matters the most. After Rio, the Olympic champion would unfortunately never hit the same peak again, with his fastest time afterwards being a 3:31 that he ran 2 years later. He would crash out of the heats in the 2017 World Championships in London after an injury-ridden season, and come a disappointing 8th place in the 2019 Doha World Championships. His final fully serious year would end with him failing to make the semi-finals in the Tokyo Olympics, but given he was 32 by this point, it was not all that surprising. In the end, he would make his official retirement in 2024. Many remember him as one of the greats in USA distance running, with his Rio Olympics going down as an inspiring moment for the next generation of athletes. Others remember him as someone who was overrated, whose win was nothing more of a lucky coincidence than anything. But whatever you may think, Matthew Centrowitz helps us reflect on what it means to be the best in sports, teaching us that greatness is often much more situational than it is absolute. If you want to find out about more stories in the athletics world, then click on this video here. Thank you very much for watching, and as always, I'll see you in the next one. Happy training.